Hello, and welcome to the 27th inning. I'm your host, Michael Grinnell, and today we'll be hearing from former New York Mets outfielder Benny Agbayani. Selected in the 30th round of the 1993 draft out of Hawaii Pacific University, Agbayani would spend 4 seasons playing for New York from 1998 through 2001. That would be followed by stints with Colorado and Boston in 2002, and then a 6-year career playing for the Chiba Lotte Marines in Nippon Professional Baseball. He finished his major league career with a .274 batting average and .806 OPS, with 39 home runs and 156 RBI over 5 seasons. In Japan, he would finish his professional career by hitting .283 with an .805 OPS, 77 home runs, and 422 RBI. But it was his 2000 season where he left his biggest mark in the memories of Mets fans, thanks to a fielding blooper as well as a pair of big game-winning home runs. Now, nearly 12 years after his final game of professional baseball, Agbayani is back in Hawaii, spending his time coaching baseball and softball. I spoke with him about his journey from Hawaii to New York, his memorable 2000 season, his career in Japan, and life after baseball. We'll be back in just a moment, and when we return, you'll hear from former New York Mets outfielder Benny Agbayani. Okay, we're here now with former New York Mets outfielder Benny Agbayani. Benny, thank you for being here with us today.
Oh, no problem. You're welcome.
So just talk to us a little bit. We'll start off, born and raised in Hawaii. Talk a little bit about how you got into baseball out there. Like, who's your favorite team, your favorite players growing up? Just talk a little bit about your early years there.
Yeah, I got into baseball when I was like 6 years old. One of my coaches, Alfred Bantalan, he came driving by our house one day and saw me throwing ball out in the front yard. And he stopped his car and came out of his car and, went to talk to my parents to see if I wanted to participate in Little League. And, ever since then, I fell in love with the game.
Who are some of your favorite players or your favorite team growing up?
My favorite team was the Oakland A's because my favorite player was Rickey Henderson. And I just loved the way he played. He was one of those guys that he was a game changer. He could steal bases, he could hit home runs, and he led the game off and he set the tone for the A's. You work your way through high school and college, and eventually you're drafted in the 30th round out of Hawaii Pacific. Talk a little bit about playing in college, and then that moment when you got the call that you were going to be going to the Mets. College was great. I loved playing in college. Playing with all my friends, and I had a big blast. In '92 I got drafted by the Angels, and I opted to stay back in school. And then '93 I got drafted by the Mets. I was really excited. I didn't really anticipate it, but it always been my dream. And a kid coming out of Hawaii, that was like a slim chance that you were going to get drafted. And I'm glad my coach from Hawaii Pacific University, Boy Eldridge, made us play out in the mainland for like almost 2 months. So you're drafted, you're in the Mets organization. Talk a little bit about working your way up through the minor leagues. I reached out to some fans online, and they talked a lot about how it seemed like you really made an impact with your time in Norfolk. Yeah, I did. 1993, that was the first time I'd been off the island, and I ended up in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Once I got off the plane, I kind of was like telling myself, oh my gosh, where am I? And it was one of the guys I was with, he said, oh, welcome to the New York Penn League. And I was like, oh my gosh. And, I knew there was going to be bus rides. I knew, how it was going to be in the minor leagues, but, it was a rough adventure, but, when I got called up, it all paid off. I mean, I've been to Pittsfield, Massachusetts. I went to, St. Lucie. I've been to Binghamton, New York, and I ended up in Norfolk, Virginia. And that was a great time. The fans treated me well, the owners of the team. And, I really, really enjoyed my time with the Mets organization. So we've made it through the minor leagues. You get the call up. Your first game is in Montreal.
and then a few days later, you step out onto New York for the first time. Talk a little bit about those first few games. Like, what was going through your mind as you're stepping out there?
Oh, I was nervous. I mean, I was, my first at bat was you get the Urbina, and he was one of the top closers back then. And I was like, when Bobby Valentine told me to go in, I was like, oh my gosh, did he call my name? And I was pretty excited because that's always been my dream, to get to the major leagues and get in the bat. And after that, we went to New York. It's really true what they say is, if you can play in New York, you can play anywhere. And I mean, the New York fans, they're really intelligent. They know their baseball out there on the East Coast.
Talk a little bit about that difference from growing up and living in Hawaii to all of a sudden you're right in the middle of things out there in New York. Talk a little bit about changes going through living out there.
Oh, it was a big change. Living in New York was a fast pace. But the thing I liked was, me and my wife, we got to go to like Broadway shows. We got to go to, we spent and had a great time, seeing what New York was all about. And, I just wanted to, prove to a lot of people that I could play in New York. And, I was one of those players that I was going to go out there and give my 100%, no matter win or lose. And, I went through some battles, but, I had a lot of fun out there.
Your first full season in 1999, you mentioned him before. You got to share the clubhouse with Rickey Henderson. Talk a little bit about that. Was it a little bit starstruck there? Yeah,
it was starstruck. And I guess someone leaked it out that, he was my favorite player. But, he really took care of me. He kind of, he was at his end of his career, and he was, kind of sharing his thoughts, kind of teaching us, the way, the way we should play and the things we should do. And, it was great. I mean, I would never trade anything for it. And, it was so awesome that when he left, he gave me his jersey. And, I really, that really touched my heart.
Yeah, I bet that must have been a big moment for you as a fan growing up.
Oh yeah, it was. I was like kind of like, you sure you're gonna give this to me? He goes, yeah. And I said, all right. And then after that, I said, oh, can I have a bat also? And he gave me a bat. And it's one of those things. You look around the clubhouse, you see all these players you played with, and like Mike Piazza, he's in the Hall of Fame. And I look back at it, Al Leiter. You see guys on TV now that you have played with, and you're just like, wow, I actually played with those guys.
Among all those guys that you just mentioned, you also played under manager Bobby Valentine in 1999, that rookie season, the mustache incident when he got ejected. Talk a little bit about what that was like, the dugouts. Did you realize right away that he had snuck back in there?
Yeah, it was kind of awesome because, everyone looked at they knew he got kicked out, and then all of a sudden, people were looking down at the end of the dugout, and they saw Bobby, and we just ran back into the clubhouse and started laughing. I mean, it was amazing, but it was amazing how the cameras picked it up into our dugout. And, like I said, when you're playing in New York, nothing can get by you.
So you had a good rookie season in 1999, moving into 2000 now. And that's where it seems like you've really established yourself with like the plays that you're most well known for among the Mets fans. Starting things off, that grand slam in the Japan series against the Cubs, the game-winning grand slam. Talk about that moment that got your team that first win in 2000.
Yeah, I was on the bubble of making the team. We made some big trades, and I had a meeting before we went on the trip, and Bobby said, hang in there, just do your best, and just see how everything plays out. And it was so funny because it was like a fairy tale, because I was, the last man off the bench. And here I am again in a tough situation where, the bases are loaded. The game is tied. We're in, Tokyo, Japan. And, everyone's watching the opening game, of the 2000 season. And I come up and, fortunately, I was grateful that I hit that grand slam. I mean, that kind of helped me out, in my situation.
So you had that big moment. Talk a little bit about what it was like once you got back to home plate, got back to the dugout, you guys closed out that game. Talk a little bit about, did it really start to sink in just how big of a hit that was after the final out?
Yeah, it was. It was like, oh my gosh, I just hit a grand slam, we won, and and then we had the ceremony after that, and everything just went wild after that, and I was like, they then they came out with this big trophy, and they usually give it to the sumo wrestlers when they win a match, when they win the tournament. And I'm like, well, what is this? I said, how am I going to bring this back? And unfortunately, Jay Horace said, don't worry, I'll take care of it. Where do you want me to send it? I said, I'm not taking it to New York. Just send it back home to Hawaii. And he goes, oh, that's easy to do. So it's in Hawaii. So I told my family back home, hey, make sure you guys open up the box and take a look at it. I said, it's a rare, a trophy, and it was one of those things where, you look at it and you kind of just say, wow, man, only sumo, tournament sumo wrestlers get these kind of stuffs after tournaments. And I'm like, wow, shit, that's really awesome.
So one of the other big moments that fans remember you for, not quite as great, but it's a funny moment when it was in the game. You made the final catch. You handed the ball to the fan in the stands. It was only the second out, not the third out. You had to reach back in there and try and grab it from the fan and try and throw it back. Talk a little bit about what was going through your mind during that moment, and then afterwards, and then what your teammates were telling you in the clubhouse afterwards.
Yeah, that moment, I know we were playing the Giants, and I was bending down and I looked at the scoreboard, and I think I saw two. It said, and I think it was the count. And, when the ball was hit to me, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, 3 outs. And then I gave the kid the ball, and then all of a sudden I'm looking, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, everyone was running. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I grabbed the ball back and I threw it back. And, and then, after that we got out of that inning, and I was very fortunate. Again, my captain bailed me out and we had to win. But when I ran into the dugout, everybody was so quiet, but I know they wanted to laugh. And after we won the game, it was more of a laughter thing, and everybody started kidding around. And then Bobby Valentine called me to his office, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is he? I know I screwed up already. I know, and then he goes, hey, Benny, I don't know about you Hawaiians, but, here in the United States, we count 1, 2, 3. I don't know how you guys count in Hawaii, but, there's 3 outs in this game. And I started laughing. And then, my Rawlings guy, Steve Cohen, he ended up making a ticker. So he goes, use this. He puts it on my glove so that I can count the outs when I catch the ball or when we make outs. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. Everybody was laughing.
So, and then the third big moment for that 2000 season, that walk-off home run in Game 3, the 13th inning of the National League Division Series. Talk about that moment, watching the ball travel off your bat and over the fence.
Oh my gosh! It's like, one of those things where you're in a tough situation again, and you just want to win. That's why when I came up that inning, everybody's like, just end it, or just. I just wanted to get on base because I knew my teammates could drive me in. And, I just got the barrel. I got a good pitch. I got the barrel on it, and boom, it went out. I mean, it was one of those, electrifying moments that you'll never forget because, I mean, there was so much Mets fans. That stadium was erupting. And, it was one of those moments you want to just go on your knees and go, oh, my gosh, we did it.
It's one of those moments that every kid in Little League dreams of doing, like hitting the game-winning home run in the playoffs. How big was that for you? Do you think that little you back playing Little League, everyone thought you would be at that point?
Yeah, I mean, you never know. I mean, you just when you're playing Little League, you play for the love of the game. You just want to play, and you're enjoying every moment. You get to the major leagues. It's your dream come true. It's one of those moments where you're like, you got to pinch yourself because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm here. I'm actually here. I'm living the dream of every child and every person in Hawaii that wanted to become a Major League Baseball player. And for me, it was a great honor, being from Hawaii, representing, the state, the 5-0 state. And, it was one of those moments where you never forget.
You bring that up. A lot of kids on Hawaii like wanting to make it to the major leagues and whatnot. And just talk a little bit about, this is one of the questions that a fan wanted me to ask you about. There really aren't that many Hawaiians or Pacific Islanders playing in Major League Baseball. What do you think is something that could be done to help promote that sport amongst that community and to, help see more Hawaiian-born players in the majors?
I think there's so much resources for all the guys that played from Hawaii. I mean, a lot of the kids in Hawaii should ask us what would it take, how much training there's going to have to be, and how much time you got to put into the sport. I mean, once you become a professional baseball player, it's like a full-time job. I mean, you got to go out there, you got to train year round. There's guys, the draft is coming around again, and there's new guys coming in. Everyone's hungry to make it to the major leagues. It's just that you gotta keep your training. You gotta be at the right place at the right time, and just understand the resources, understand what's out there, and understand how to become a major league baseball player.
2001, not a great season. You had some injuries that you dealt with. And then in 2002, you were part of a big 3-team trade and you went to Colorado. Talk a little bit about those last couple of years for you in the majors.
Yeah, it was kind of a rough, situation for me. It's one of those things where, you come up the system, you come up the Mets farm system, and, as a player, you think, oh my gosh, I'm going to come up this system, I'm going to end, being a Met. And, it was very unfortunate that it didn't happen for me, but I wish it did. And, I had to move on. I had to just kind of, tell myself, yeah, you know what, maybe it was meant to be, and just, kind of go to another team and see how it was going to be over there. But, like I told a lot of people, my heart was still always, in New York, because, the New York Mets gave me my first opportunity to play, professionally.
You ended up going and playing with Chiba Lott in 2004, played with Bobby Valentine again. Talk a little bit about the differences playing between Major League Baseball and over in Japan.
Yeah, the difference between Major League Baseball and Japan. Well, Major League, Bobby kind of bring that, that flair to Japan, where, our spring trainings wasn't as long. It was more of a major league spring training. The biggest difference, the players in the major leagues are a lot more stronger, than the Japan. You'll get some here and there, but, they got a lot of good players in Japan. And, it's just that, you're watched. When you're playing in the major leagues, you're watched by a million people. You're in Japan, you're amongst the Japan people. But I tell you, the Japan people, they're fans. I mean, they follow you from day one to the end of the season. I mean, they're out there. I mean, they got cheers. They got all kinds of, cheers for each player, in the teams. And, it's one of those things where I tell a lot of people, if you've never been to a Japan game, you need to experience it, because it's going to be a once in a lifetime. I mean, it's a lot of drinking, a lot of smoking, a lot of cheering. I think that's what it was. And, it's just that, they're so in tune into, the baseball. They're there. Like, I even found out there's like East and West fans when you're playing in Japan. So like the East fans will come on certain side of the cities where we play it, and then the West fans are more where the home games and more closer to your stadium. But it's just that the major leagues, you have a lot more perks when you're playing in the major leagues in the U.S. side.
Now, just looking back over your career, both in the United States and in Japan, like, just who are some of the players that stand out the most in your mind? Like the teammates, or like the toughest pitchers or players that you had to go up against? Just who are some of the guys that really stick out in your mind all these years later?
Well, there's a lot of players. There was the Braves pitching staff when I came up, Greg Maddux, John Smoltz, Glavine, all those guys, they're, and Randy Johnson, I faced Roger Clemens, Pedro Martinez. At that time, you're facing the top pitchers in the major leagues. And, it was one of those things where, you kind of look at it and say, wow, I faced all these guys that I used to watch. And, it was amazing, and, I came up the system, I had, like Jay Payton, he was one of my good friends. And, we shared a lot of good memories together.
So talk a little bit about that transition from your playing career into retirement. When did you kind of decide that this was the point where you were going to start focusing on life after baseball?
It was funny because when my last year was 2000 and I think it was 2009, and we were coming up to the season, and we were coming to the end, and I told Bobby, I didn't really discuss it with a lot of people, but I told Bobby, I said, hey, Skip, if I hit a home run right here, I'm done. And I'm good. I'm good. I'm gonna step away from the game. And my first at bat, and he looked at me. He kind of gave me that grin, that that Bobby Valentine grin, where he kind of gives you that smile, that smirk. And I guess it was meant to be, because my first at bat, I ended up hitting a home run to right field, and I jogged around the bases, and everyone, I gave Bobby and Frank Rampin a hug, and everybody was looking at me like, what am I doing? And one of the interpreters, he ended up telling the team. And it was one of those moments where I just felt it was time for me to walk away from the game. And I was getting a little older, my my knees started to go, and I knew already that I had children, and I wanted them to experience what I have experienced, and make sure I can play with them, walk, throw, and, don't give them an excuse why I can't do it.
So what have you been up to since you last stepped on the diamond? Like, what have you been doing in your retirement?
What I've been doing, I have coached I have coached my son, baseball. I have, right now I'm into girls softball. I have coached my older daughter, who is at Cal Berkeley, and now I have my other daughter. So I coach at Iolani School out in Honolulu, and I coach on the mainland with the OC Batbusters, Rob Bennett, and I just been very busy, just doing softball and baseball, and trying to get my son on track of what he wants to do, and try to train him, and share as much as knowledge I can with him to give him the opportunity of, becoming a professional baseball player.
Coaching softball, is it significantly different than what it'll be coaching baseball?
It's tough. It's tough. You deal with a lot of girls, issues and things like that. But, I kind of explained to them what it is all about. And, it's the grind. And, I was very fortunate to have girls that, they understood it. They kind of got it. And, I always tell them, your future is bright. You just got to work hard. You got to train hard. And for softball, it's so fast. Everything's so fast. So, if you blink an eye, the ball's going to go over the fence. And, that's what I like about softball, because there's so many aspects of game changers in a lineup. There's slappers, there's bunters, there's hitters, there's power hitters. There's a lot of things.
All right, and then one last question. You didn't have a long career in Major League Baseball. It's only like about 5 years, but it seems like you really made an impact, especially with the Mets fandom. When I've been doing research to talk with you, I've been seeing so many positive things said about you, and so many positive memories from Mets fans about their memories of watching you play. Even though it's such a brief time, you still stand out to a lot of people. What does that mean to you that you were able to have such an impact on the memories of so many Mets fans?
It means a lot to me, because, I grew up in that system, and, the fans treated me well. And, one thing I learned was, just be straight out. If I screwed up, I told them I screwed up. It was one of those things where, you know, they understood how I was, and I understood how they was. I know what they wanted. I know I try to give them my 100% when I was out there, and I wanted to win. I wanted to win for New York, and you know, I wanted to give them the respect because they're out there cheering. I mean, if you're a fan, you want to be out there. You want your team to win, and that's how I kind of treated it. Where I wanted to win. I wanted to win it for New York, and it was exciting. I mean, I appreciate everything the fans, backed me up in, and I'm very grateful, and just that aloha spirit. That's what I wanted to bring to New York.
Thank you, Benny, for being on with us today. I appreciate you talking with us.
All right, no problem. Mahalo.
And that will do it for this episode of the 27th Inning. Thanks again to Benny for being on the show. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast for future episodes, and you can find the show now on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Breaker, Pocket Casts, and Radio Public. If you have suggestions for future guests you'd like to hear from, or questions that you'd like them to answer, you can send me a message on Twitter at Michael Grinnell. That's Michael, Grennell. Check back for next week's episode where you'll hear from a 22-year veteran of Major League Baseball, former Dodgers and Pirates pitcher Jerry Royce. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.